All right, so get this. Imagine a garden, like a lush green garden, right in the middle of the desert.
Wow.
It sounds kind of crazy, right? Like something out of a movie.
Yeah, totally.
But scientists and innovators in the Middle East, they're actually working on making this a reality.
That's amazing.
And the solutions they're coming up with, let me tell you, they're pretty ingenious.
I bet.
So we've got this really fascinating scientific paper.
Okay.
And it basically argues that instead of trying to, transform these vast desert landscapes, we should be focusing our greening efforts on cities.
Interesting.
It's a pretty bold idea, especially when you consider that the Middle East relies so heavily on desalination for their water.
Yeah, desalination, it definitely comes with its own set of challenges, especially when it comes to energy.
Sure. It's often super energy intensive, and a lot of times it's still powered by fossil fuels.
Exactly. And the paper we're looking at, it actually dives right into those issues.
Really?
Yeah, and it proposes some really clever ways to make urban greening more sustainable.
I'm intrigued, so let's get into it.
Sounds good.
Okay, so first things first, why focus on cities? Why are they the key to greening the desert? I mean, we often picture deserts as these wide open spaces, right? Like prime real estate for transformation.
Right, but the paper makes this really compelling argument for urban greening,
Oh,
and it all comes down to population.
gotcha.
Most people in the Middle East already live in cities.
That's true.
I mean, think about the Gulf states. Like, over 80% of their population lives in urban areas.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So if you want to have the biggest impact, it makes sense to concentrate those greening efforts where most people are going to benefit, right?
Right, it's about maximizing the benefits, not just focusing on the landscape.
Exactly.
But here's the thing. If we're talking cities, doesn't that mean we're kind of stuck with the whole desalination problem?
Yeah, it's a valid concern.
Because cities need a ton of water, and desalination plants, they can be major energy hogs.
Oh, absolutely. And the paper, it acknowledges that. It talks about it directly. It really stresses the importance of combining desalination with renewable energy sources,
Makes sense?
like solar or wind power, to try to, lower the carbon footprint.
None of that footprint, yeah.
Yeah, and there's another interesting idea they put forward,
Sure.
using partially desalinated seawater,
Partially.
or even brackish groundwater
Okay.
to water plants that can tolerate salt, especially in those coastal cities.
Wait, partially desalinated water?
Yeah.
Is that even, a thing?
Oh, it's definitely a thing.
And wouldn't it still take a lot of energy to get it to that, partially desalinated point?
Well, the idea is that you're matching the water quality to what the plant actually needs.
Ah, I see.
You don't always need perfectly pure fresh water for every type of greenery, right?
Right.
And using that partially desalinated water requires less energy than producing the kind we drink.
That makes sense.
The paper even mentions that some plants actually thrive in those brackish conditions. So we can utilize those existing groundwater sources more strategically.
So it's about being smarter with our water use,
Exactly.
not always defaulting to the most energy-intensive solution.
That's the idea.
I like it, but is there any way to bypass desalination altogether?
That's a great question.
It feels like we're still tied to it, even with those, clever tweaks.
Well, this is where it gets really interesting.
That's right on me.
The paper suggests tapping into a resource that often gets overlooked: treated wastewater.
Wastewater.
Yeah.
Hold on. Using wastewater to, grow plants.
Yeah.
Isn't that kind of, icky? And is it even safe?
I know it might sound kind of surprising, but it's a totally viable option with the right technology.
Okay.
Think about how much wastewater we generate globally.
It's got to be a lot.
The paper focuses on Saudi Arabia as an example.
Okay.
It estimates that they could potentially produce, get this, 9 million cubic meters of treated wastewater every day
9 million.
if they manage to capture and treat it all. Yeah.
Wow. Okay, you've got my attention.
Good.
So how do we go from wastewater to water that can actually, nourish plants?
Well, the paper talks about a couple of approaches.
Right.
Aerobic treatment, which is what's most common right now.
Okay.
It uses oxygen to break down contaminants.
Right.
And then there's anaerobic treatment, which doesn't use oxygen.
So two different paths, but which one's the front runner for this whole urban greening vision?
Well, the paper points out that aerobic treatment, while it's effective, it still uses a fair amount of energy.
I see.
Anaerobic treatment, though, that has the potential to be practically energy-free.
Wow, that's impressive.
It's pretty early on in terms of development, but
Yeah.
the implications for sustainable water management are huge.
Huge.
Not just for greening, but for all sorts of things.
Energy-free water treatment, that's That's a game changer.
It is.
Now, this whole wastewater thing doesn't seem so far-fetched,
Exact.
but I'm still a little fuzzy on how the plants themselves, like how do they help clean the water?
Okay, imagine you've got these biofiltration systems
Right.
with plants incorporated right into them. You
Right.
think like green walls, avenues lined with trees, all these specialized planting pits, even constructed wetlands right within the urban landscape.
So like natural filtration systems.
Exactly. And they're not just pretty to look at.
Right.
They actually help to clean the water.
I see.
They're designed with layers of filtration media, like sand,
Uh-huh.
that physically clean the water.
Okay.
And here's the really cool part. They also support these communities of helpful microorganisms.
Microorganisms.
Yeah, they work together with the plants to remove contaminants from the water.
So it's like a team effort.
It is.
Plants and microbes working together to clean things up.
Yep.
It's amazing how nature can lend a hand like that.
Right.
What happens to the water after it passes through these systems?
Yep.
Does it just like disappear?
Not at all. It can be collected
Oh, okay.
and reused
Yeah.
for things like irrigation.
Oh, that's smart.
One of the best things about these systems is that they're designed to minimize water loss through evaporation and runoff.
So they're super efficient.
Yeah.
This is all very impressive. It seems like we're really starting to get a clear picture of how these urban oases could actually become, a reality.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering about the soil itself.
Okay.
I've always heard that Middle Eastern soil isn't exactly ideal for growing a lot of plants.
That's a good point. Soil is another major challenge.
Is there a solution for that too?
The paper actually dives into some really innovative solutions for the soil issue as well.
Now you've really got me on the edge of my seat.
Okay, so one of the things they talk about is using super hydrophobic sand.
Super what?
Super hydrophobic.
Okay, break that down for me.
It's basically sand coated with a special material that acts like a vapor barrier.
A vapor barrier.
It drastically reduces evaporation.
So it's like giving the soil a raincoat.
Yeah, kinda.
That's brilliant, but does it really work that well?
It's incredibly effective. Studies have shown that it can reduce evaporation by up to 90%.
90%.
Yeah, it's pretty remarkable.
So we're talking about turning sand into a natural water reservoir.
That's the idea.
Mind-blowing.
And there's more.
There's more.
The paper also talks about biochar.
Biochar. Okay.
It's this charcoal-like material that can actually improve the soil's fertility.
Interesting.
It helps the soil retain moisture,
Right.
but it can also capture nutrients from the wastewater
Oh, wow.
and release them slowly, like a time-release fertilizer for the plants.
So it's not just preventing water loss. It's actually enriching the soil at the same time.
Exactly.
That's incredible. We're really thinking outside the box here.
Yeah, they are.
Is there anything else? Are there any more tricks up their sleeve?
Well, they even suggest harnessing the power of the plant microbiome.
The plant microbiome. You
Yeah.
mean like the bacteria and fungi that live in and around the roots of plants?
Exactly.
I've heard about that. It's pretty amazing stuff.
It is.
Those microbes can help plants survive in really tough conditions, right?
Right. They can make them more tolerant to things like drought and salty soil.
Which would mean you need even less fresh water for irrigation.
Exactly.
It's like giving the plants their own little support system to help them thrive in the desert.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
This is all so inspiring.
I know, right?
It's like they've taken all these seemingly separate things, the wastewater, the special sand, those helpful microbes,
Yeah.
and they've woven them together into this, like, tapestry of sustainable solutions.
Yeah.
It's a whole new way of thinking about how we can green our planet, even in the most challenging places.
You got it.
You've really hit the nail on the head.
Thanks.
It's about working with nature, not against it.
That's the key.
And the results, I mean, they could be transformative.
Totally.
Not just for the Middle East, but for other places around the world that are struggling with water.
For sure.
This whole deep dive, it's been incredibly eye-opening. It's amazing how all these pieces fit together
Yeah.
to create this really powerful and inspiring vision for the future.
It is inspiring.
Speaking of inspiration, I gotta admit, this whole thing about super hydrophobic sand,
Yeah.
it's really captured my imagination.
I can see why.
Creating a vapor barrier with sand, that's just mind-blowing.
It is pretty cool.
I feel like we could do a whole deep dive just on that one innovation.
We probably could.
But before we get too carried away,
Okay.
I want to come back to the big picture here.
All right.
We've been talking about all these amazing pieces of the puzzle,
We have.
but how do they actually fit together in a real-world setting?
That's a great question.
How do we go from these, like, individual concepts to an actual functioning green space?
Well, that's actually what's so brilliant about this whole approach.
Okay.
It's not just a bunch of cool ideas, it's a truly integrated system
Okay.
where all these elements work together to create this more sustainable and resilient urban ecosystem.
I like it. Can you paint me a picture?
Sure.
Like, how would a city actually put all these pieces together?
All right, so imagine a city in the Middle East, right?
Okay.
They're embarking on this big urban greening project
Mm-hmm.
based on all these principles we've been talking about.
Right.
One of the first steps they might take is to invest in those anaerobic wastewater treatment plants.
The energy-free ones.
Exactly. Right from the get-go, they've got a sustainable source of water for irrigation.
Okay, so we've got our eco-friendly water source.
Uh-huh.
What's next?
Then they could start designing green spaces that incorporate those biofiltration systems.
Okay.
Parks, plazas, filled with lush vegetation.
Nice.
They're naturally purifying the water,
Yeah.
creating these beautiful little oases within the city.
And I bet they'd be using that super hydrophobic sand to keep all that precious water from evaporating, right?
You got it.
And maybe even introducing those beneficial microbes into the soil
Uh-huh.
to make those green spaces even more resilient. It's like this carefully choreographed dance between nature and technology,
It is.
working together in perfect harmony.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
I love that vision.
It is a beautiful picture, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's not a one-size-fits-all solution, right?
Uh,
Each city can kind of tailor these strategies to their own specific needs.
Yeah, they can adapt it to what works best for them.
But the core principle remains the same,
It does.
working in sync with nature
Yeah,
to create truly sustainable urban spaces.
absolutely.
It's a reminder that even when we're facing these huge challenges like water scarcity,
Yeah,
we can still create thriving ecosystems
we can.
if we think creatively
For sure.
and work together.
Absolutely.
I love it. This has been such an enlightening conversation.
I agree.
It's amazing how all these different pieces fit together
Yeah, it's fascinating.
to create such a powerful and inspiring vision for the future.
It really is.
And speaking of inspiring, I gotta say, this whole idea of super hydrophobic sand, it's really piqued my curiosity.
I understand why. It's pretty amazing stuff.
Creating a vapor barrier with sand. This sounds like science fiction.
It's pretty close. It's a great example of biomimicry.
Oh, right. Taking inspiration from nature
Yeah.
to come up with these groundbreaking innovations.
Exactly.
Okay, tell me more. How does it work?
Well, what's really fascinating about super hydrophobic sand is that it's actually a pretty simple concept.
Really?
Yeah, it all comes down to surface tension.
Surface tension, like the stuff we learned about in high school science class.
Yeah, exactly. You see, water molecules, they really like to stick together.
Okay.
They create this kind of skin on the surface of water.
So far, so good. But how does that relate to making sand, water repellent?
Well, the coating on super hydrophobic sand is designed to create a surface that water molecules can't cling to.
Oh, I see.
It's like giving the sand this microscopic layer of tiny bumps that repel the water, just like a lotus leaf.
So instead of spreading out and evaporating, the water just beads up and rolls off. And it stays trapped underneath that sand layer, like a hidden reservoir.
You got it. It's like giving the sand its own lotus effect.
That's incredible. No wonder it's so good at reducing evaporation.
It's pretty effective.
But I'm curious about the practical side of things.
Okay.
How do you actually apply this super hydrophobic coating to the sand? Is it a complicated process?
You might be surprised to hear that it's actually a relatively simple process.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the coating is usually made from something like paraffin wax.
Paraffin wax.
You know, the stuff we use to seal homemade jams and jellies?
Yeah.
The sand is simply mixed with the coating material,
Uh-huh.
which then sticks to each individual sand particle.
Okay.
And the best part is that it can be done on a large scale or even on-site using pretty basic equipment.
So it's a scalable and affordable solution.
Exactly.
That's great news.
It is.
It means it could be implemented in all sorts of settings, from small community gardens to large-scale agricultural projects.
For sure.
Okay, before we get too carried away with all the amazing potential of super hydrophobic sand,
Right.
I want to touch on a topic that's been on my mind throughout this whole discussion.
Okay.
Measuring the effectiveness of these greening efforts.
That's a crucial point.
How do we know if they're truly sustainable in the long run?
Right.
Is there a way to, quantify their impact?
Well, that's where life cycle assessments come in.
Life cycle assessments, I've heard that term before, but can you refresh my memory?
Sure, think of it as a comprehensive environmental audit.
Okay.
It's a way to track the water, energy, and carbon footprint of a project from start to finish,
I see.
making sure that the benefits, really outweigh the costs in the long run.
So it's like a holistic evaluation, making sure we're not just creating green spaces, but truly sustainable ones.
Exactly.
But isn't it hard to quantify things like the social and economic benefits of green spaces?
That's a good point.
Like, how do you measure things like improved mental health or increased work productivity?
It's definitely a challenge, but it's not impossible.
Okay.
There are methods for quantifying those benefits,
Okay.
and the paper emphasizes the importance of doing so.
Makes sense.
After all, the goal of urban greening isn't just to make cities prettier.
Right.
It's about improving the overall well-being of the people who live there.
It's about taking a holistic approach, considering all the impacts of these projects, the environmental, the social, the economic.
Yeah, it's about looking at the whole picture.
That's a really important point.
It is.
But before we wrap up this part of our deep dive,
Okay,
I have one last question.
sure.
We've talked a lot about the potential benefits of urban greening,
We have.
but are there any potential downsides or challenges that we need to be aware of?
It's an excellent question.
Is there like a flip side to this coin?
It's important to acknowledge that urban greening, like any complex endeavor, has its own set of challenges.
Okay.
It's not a magic bullet that will solve all our problems overnight.
Yeah.
There are trade-offs and potential downsides we need to be mindful of.
Can you give me some examples? What are some things we need to be cautious about as we move forward with these ambitious greening projects?
Well, one of the biggest challenges, and this is true for a lot of sustainability initiatives, is the cost.
Yeah, that makes sense.
While some technologies, like that super hydrophobic sand, are relatively affordable,
Right.
others, like building those anaerobic wastewater treatment plants, they can require a lot of upfront investment.
Yeah, that could be a major barrier for some cities.
It could.
So funding is a crucial piece of the puzzle.
It is.
Are there other potential roadblocks?
Another challenge is the ongoing maintenance and management of these green spaces.
Oh, right, because they're living systems.
Exactly.
They need constant care and attention.
They do.
Things like irrigation, pruning, pest control,
Yeah, all of that.
and constantly monitoring the health of the soil and the plants.
Exactly. It's not a set it and forget it kind of solution.
Right, it requires ongoing commitment and resources
It does.
to make sure these green spaces really flourish over time.
And it's crucial to get the local community involved.
Oh, that's a great point.
In every step of the way, the planning, the implementation, the long-term maintenance.
Yeah, it's about creating a sense of ownership and responsibility.
Exactly.
Making sure the project is sustainable over time.
You got it.
It makes perfect sense.
It does.
It's not just about planting trees and shrubs. It's about creating a shared vision,
Yeah,
a collaborative approach to greening the city.
absolutely. By involving the community, you can tap into their knowledge, their preferences,
Yeah.
make sure these green spaces are really designed to meet the needs of the people who will be using them.
This has been an incredibly enlightening conversation.
It has.
I feel like I've gained a whole new perspective on the potential of urban greening.
I'm glad to hear that.
It's amazing to think that we can actually design our cities
Yeah.
to be more sustainable and resilient, even in the face of these challenges like water scarcity.
It's truly a paradigm shift in how we think about urban planning.
It is, and it's exciting. You know, it's about moving away from that idea of cities as concrete jungles
Yeah.
and embracing this concept of cities as integrated ecosystems.
Exactly.
And what strikes me is that this isn't just limited to the Middle East.
Right.
These principles could be applied anywhere in the world.
They can.
Every city has its own unique challenges and opportunities when it comes to sustainability.
That's true.
Adapting these ideas to different contexts is key.
It is.
What works in Dubai might not work in London or Los Angeles.
Right? But the underlying principles, they're still the same.
Yeah.
It's about understanding the local environment,
Yeah.
working with nature,
Uh-huh.
and using technology in a way that enhances rather than disrupts those natural systems.
I think this highlights the importance of collaboration and knowledge sharing on a global scale.
I agree.
Imagine if cities around the world could learn from each other,
That would be fantastic.
sharing their successes and challenges,
Yeah.
working together to create a more sustainable future for everyone.
That's a powerful vision.
It is.
And I think it's entirely achievable.
I think so too.
We have the knowledge, the technology, the collective will. It's just a matter of putting all the pieces together.
Well said. Speaking of putting the pieces together, we've talked a lot about the environmental benefits of urban greening,
Yeah.
but I'm also curious about the social and economic impacts.
Okay.
How do these green spaces affect the lives of the people who actually live and work in these cities?
That's a great question.
beyond just the environmental benefits?
Right. Well, one of the most compelling arguments for urban greening is that it's not just about the environment.
Okay.
It's about people, too.
Well, that makes sense.
Studies have shown that access to green spaces can have a big impact on mental and physical health.
Really?
Yeah, it can reduce stress, improve mood, even boost cognitive function.
It's a dose of nature therapy.
Yeah, right in the heart of the city.
I know. I always feel more relaxed and energized after spending time in a park or garden.
Exactly. And those benefits, they go beyond just individual well-being.
Oh, how so?
Well, green spaces can also foster a sense of community.
That's true.
They provide gathering places for social interaction, recreation, cultural events.
I like that.
They can even have a positive impact on local economies.
Really?
Yeah, by attracting businesses, tourists, residents who value a high quality of life.
So it's a win-win situation for both people and the planet.
Exactly.
By creating these green spaces, we're not just improving the environment, we're making our cities more livable,
Yeah.
more vibrant, more prosperous.
It's about creating this holistic vision of sustainability,
I like it.
one that recognizes the interconnectedness of environmental, social, and economic well-being.
It's amazing to think about the ripple effects that these green spaces can have.
Yeah.
Not just on the immediate environment, but on the entire fabric of a city.
It's like this domino effect of positive change.
It really is.
It's a reminder that sustainability isn't just about technology or policy.
Right.
It's about creating a fundamental shift in how we think about our relationship with the natural world and how we design our cities to reflect that relationship.
As we're talking about this,
Yeah.
I'm struck by the fact that even in the face of these global challenges like climate change and water scarcity,
Mm-hmm.
there's so much innovation and creativity happening all over the world.
There is.
It gives me a sense of hope for the future.
Me too. It's easy to get bogged down in all the doom and gloom.
Yeah.
But stories like this, they remind us that humans are incredibly resilient and resourceful.
We are.
We have the ability to solve even the most complex problems
We do.
if we put our minds to it and work together.
Well said. This deep dive has been incredibly inspiring.
It's been a pleasure exploring these ideas with you today.
And I hope our listeners are feeling that same sense of hope and possibility.
I hope so too.
It's clear that there are so many brilliant minds working on solutions to these challenges,
There are.
and that knowledge and innovation are spreading rapidly around the world.
That's the good news.
Absolutely. And I can't wait to see what the future holds for sustainable urban development.
Me neither.
Who knows what incredible innovations we'll be discussing in our next deep dive.
It's going to be exciting to find out. It's been a fascinating discussion so far.
It has.
Looking ahead, what are your thoughts on these techniques being applied outside the Middle East?
That's a good question.
Do you think they could work in other regions facing water scarcity? Like, say, California or Australia,
That's a really interesting thought.
or even parts of Africa?
Yeah, it feels like the Middle East is almost like this living laboratory for this kind of innovation.
In a way, yeah.
If they could figure out how to green the desert,
Right?
imagine what they could teach the rest of the world.
Exactly. The paper doesn't really address that global application directly,
Okay.
but it's definitely something to think about.
Yeah,
The principles behind these solutions, they're universal.
that's true.
Of course, you'd need to adapt the specific plants and soil amendments, the microbial communities, to each region's own climate and conditions.
Right. It's like a blueprint for sustainable greening that you can customize for different environments.
Exactly.
That's a really exciting idea.
It is.
It's like exporting the knowledge and innovation developed in the Middle East to
Oh,
tackle this global challenge.
Precisely, and think about the collaborations that could happen.
Oh, yeah.
Scientists and engineers from all over the world
Right.
sharing their knowledge and resources
Working together.
to create greener, more resilient cities.
It's a pretty inspiring vision.
It is.
This whole deep dive has really changed my perspective.
How so?
I used to think that greening the desert was just a pipe dream,
Yeah,
but now it feels like a real possibility,
it does.
and not just in the Middle East.
That's the power of science and human ingenuity, right?
It is.
We're constantly pushing the boundaries of what we thought was possible.
That's true.
And with the urgency of climate change and water scarcity,
Yeah.
these kinds of innovations couldn't come at a better time.
They couldn't, one thing that really stood out to me was that super hydrophobic sand,
Oh, yeah, that's fascinating stuff.
creating a vapor barrier with sand.
It's pretty amazing.
It just seems like magic.
It's pretty close.
I'm so curious with the science behind it.
Well, what's fascinating is that it's actually inspired by nature.
Oh, how so?
You know that image of a lotus leaf?
Yeah, how the water just beads up and rolls right off.
Exactly. It keeps the leaf clean and dry.
Yeah.
Scientists have essentially mimicked that structure, but at a microscopic level,
Wow.
to create that special coating for the sand particles.
So they're taking cues from nature and applying them to engineering.
Exactly. That's biomimicry in action.
That's so cool. But how does it actually prevent evaporation? Does the coating somehow change the water?
It's not really about changing the water itself.
Okay.
It's more about manipulating how the water interacts with the sand.
Gotcha.
Remember how we talked about surface tension?
Yeah, how those water molecules like to stick together?
Right. Well, the coating on super hydrophobic sand creates a surface that those water molecules just can't cling to.
Oh, so it's like giving the sand its own lotus effect.
Exactly.
Instead of spreading out and evaporating, the water beads up
Uh-huh.
and it gets trapped beneath the sand.
Right, like a little hidden reservoir.
That's incredible. No wonder it's so effective at reducing evaporation.
It's pretty amazing. Studies have shown it can reduce evaporation by up to 90%.
Wow, 90%. That's a game changer,
It is.
especially in those dry climates.
Absolutely.
I can see this having a huge impact on agriculture, landscaping, even reforestation.
For sure.
But I'm curious about the practical side of things.
Okay.
How do they actually apply this coating?
It's actually a pretty straightforward process.
Sure.
Yeah, the coating is usually made from something like paraffin wax.
Like the stuff for candles.
Yeah, exactly. And it's very affordable.
Okay.
They just mix the sand with the coating material,
Uh-huh.
and it adheres to those individual sand particles.
Okay.
It can be done on a large scale industrially.
Right.
Or even on site with some pretty basic equipment.
So it's scalable and cost effective.
It is.
That's fantastic.
Yeah,
It means this technology could be used in all sorts of settings,
absolutely.
from small community gardens to large-scale projects.
You got it.
Okay, I think I could talk about super hydrophobic sand all day,
It is fascinating stuff.
but I want to make sure we keep exploring all these amazing ideas.
Sounds good.
You know, we've been focusing on the individual parts of this urban greening approach,
Right.
but I'm curious about how it all comes together in a real-world scenario.
That's an important point.
Like, how do these different pieces actually work together in a real city?
All right, well, let's say a city in the Middle East decides to implement this big urban greening plan
Yeah.
based on all these principles we've been discussing.
Uh.
They might start by investing in those anaerobic wastewater treatment plants.
Right, the energy-free ones.
Exactly. So right away, they've got that sustainable source of water for irrigation.
Okay, so we've got our eco-friendly water supply. What happens next?
From there, they could design parks and public spaces with built-in biofiltration systems using a variety of plants and those amazing microbes.
To further purify the water.
Exactly.
Create these beautiful green spaces.
Yeah, it's about making the city more functional and more beautiful at the same time.
I'm picturing those vibrant green walls.
Yeah,
Maybe even rooftops covered in vegetation.
that would be amazing.
And of course, they'd be using that super hydrophobic sand in the soil to prevent water loss.
You got it.
And they might even introduce those specially selected microbes to the soil.
Yeah, to boost the health and resilience of the plants.
So they need even less water.
Exactly.
It's like this carefully orchestrated symphony of nature and technology
It is, isn't it?
working together in perfect harmony
That's a great way to describe it.
to create these thriving urban oases.
I love it.
And remember, this is just one example.
Right.
The specific strategies and combinations, they'll vary, depending on each city's own environment and needs.
Exactly. There's no one-size-fits-all solution.
But the possibilities are pretty much endless.
They are.
It's inspiring to think that we can actually design our cities to be more sustainable
Uh-huh.
and resilient, even with challenges like water scarcity.
It really is a paradigm shift
It is.
in how we think about urban planning.
You know, it's moving away from that idea of cities as concrete jungles
Yeah,
and embracing this idea of cities as integrated ecosystems.
exactly. And, you know, it's not just limited to the Middle East, right?
Right. That's what's so exciting about it.
These principles, they can be applied anywhere.
Anywhere in the world.
Every city has its own unique set of challenges and opportunities when it comes to sustainability.
Yeah. Adapting these ideas to different contexts, that's key.
It is. What works in Dubai might not work in London or Los Angeles.
Right. But the underlying principles, They're universal.
Exactly. It's about understanding the local environment, working with nature, and using technology in a way that enhances rather than disrupts those natural systems.
This really highlights the importance of collaboration.
It does.
And knowledge sharing on a global scale.
Absolutely. Imagine cities around the world learning from each other.
Yeah, sharing their successes and challenges.
Working together.
To create a more sustainable future for everyone.
It's a powerful vision.
It is, and I think it's achievable.
I do too.
We have the knowledge, the technology, the collective will.
It's all there.
We just need to put it all together.
Well said.
You know, we've talked a lot about the environmental benefits of urban greening.
Yeah.
But I'm also curious about the social and economic impacts.
Okay.
Like, how do these green spaces affect the people who live and work in these cities?
That's a great question. It's about more than just the environment.
Right, exactly.
One of the best arguments for urban greening is that it's also about people.
That makes sense.
Studies have shown that access to green spaces can have a really positive impact on people's health.
Oh, wow.
Both mental and physical health.
Interesting.
It can reduce stress, improve mood, even boost cognitive function.
So it's like a dose of nature therapy.
Yeah.
Right in the city.
I know, I always feel better after spending some time in nature.
Exactly.
More relaxed, more energized.
And those benefits, they extend beyond individual well-being.
Oh, in what way?
Well, green spaces can also foster a sense of community.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, they provide those gathering places for social interaction, recreation, cultural events.
It's like a community hub.
Exactly. And they can even have a positive impact on local economies.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they can attract businesses, tourists, residents who value a high quality of life.
It's a win-win for both people and the planet.
Absolutely.
So by creating these green spaces, we're not just improving the environment.
Right.
We're also making our cities more livable, more vibrant, more prosperous.
It's about creating this holistic vision of sustainability.
Yeah, I like that.
One that recognizes that connection between environmental, social, and economic well-being.
It's amazing to think about the ripple effects that these green spaces can have.
They really can be transformative, not just on the immediate environment, but on the entire fabric of a city.
It's true. It's like this domino effect of positive change.
It really is. It's a reminder that sustainability isn't just about technology or policy.
It's bigger than that.
It's about changing how we think about our relationship with the natural world.
Exactly.
And how we design our cities to reflect that relationship.
Well said.
You know, as we're talking about all of this, I'm struck by the fact that even with all these global challenges we're facing.
Like climate change.
Yeah, climate change, water scarcity.
Right.
There's still so much innovation and creativity happening all over the world.
There is.
It gives me hope for the future.
Me too. It's easy to get caught up in all the negativity.
Yeah, it is.
But stories like this, they remind us that humans are incredibly resilient and resourceful.
We are.
We have the ability to solve these complex problems.
We do.
If we work together.
Absolutely. This deep dive has been so inspiring.
Glad to hear that.
And I hope our listeners are feeling that same sense of hope and possibility.
I hope so too.
It's clear that there are so many bright minds out there.
Yeah.
Working on solutions to these challenges.
There are.
And that knowledge and innovation, they're spreading all over the world.
That's the good news.
It is.
It's been a real pleasure exploring these ideas with you today.
Likewise.
And I'm excited to see what the future holds for sustainable urban development.
Me too. Who knows what amazing innovations we'll be talking about in our next deep dive.
It's going to be fascinating to find out.
Wow. It feels like we've only just scratched the surface here.
I know, right?
There's so much more we could explore.
Absolutely. This field is just exploding with new developments.
It's really exciting stuff. So what stood out to you the most from all the ideas we talked about today?
Tough question.
What really got your mental gears turning?
It's hard to pick just one thing.
I know, right? It's all so fascinating.
Yeah, but I'm really intrigued by that whole idea of harnessing the plant microbiome.
Me too. That's what really fascinates me as well.
It's like we're just starting to understand this whole secret language of plants.
Yeah, how they communicate and interact with these microbial communities.
It's mind-boggling, right?
Totally. These intricate relationships between plants and microbes.
Yeah.
They've been evolving for millions of years.
And we're only just beginning to understand how it all works.
It makes you realize that there's so much more to a plant than we can see.
Right. It's not just a passive organism soaking up sunlight.
It's an active participant in this complex web of interactions.
With the soil, the air, these invisible microbial allies.
And what's so exciting is that this research has the potential to completely change how we approach agriculture and landscaping,
Oh, absolutely.
even ecological restoration.
Imagine being able to tailor the microbiome of a plant
Yeah.
to help it survive in specific conditions.
Like drought or salty soil.
Even pollution.
It's like giving plants a custom toolkit to thrive in challenging environments.
Exactly. And the implications for food security, climate change mitigation, ecosystem restoration, it's huge.
It's enormous. And the best part is that this approach works with nature
Right.
instead of trying to control or dominate it.
It's about understanding and respecting those delicate ecosystems.
Yeah, working with them to achieve our goals.
It's a good reminder that sometimes the best solutions are already there in nature.
We just have to figure out how to tap into them.
And that's what makes this journey of discovery so exciting.
It really does.
There's so much more to learn, so many secrets waiting to be unlocked.
And so many possibilities for innovation.
I can't wait to see what the future holds.
Me neither. And for you listening out there,
Yeah, to our amazing listener.
I hope this deep dive has sparked your curiosity.
I hope it's inspired you to think differently about how we can green our world.
Maybe you're wondering how these ideas could be applied in your own community.
Or in your own work.
Maybe you have questions or insights you'd like to share.
We'd love to hear from you.
Join the conversation. Share your thoughts.
Let's explore these ideas together.
Because creating a more sustainable future,
It's a team effort.
it requires all of us working together.
Bringing our passion, our creativity, our commitment.
So keep those minds curious.
Keep those hearts hopeful.
And let's keep digging deeper into this fascinating world of sustainable innovation.
There's so much to discover out there.
Until next time, happy exploring.